Hi everybody. It is now about the middle of October, and if you live here in the northern hemisphere, we are well underway into autumn. I know my friends down in the southern hemisphere are probably very thankful that they're well on their way into spring, but we here in the north are heading into the winter. And if you live where I live, or anywhere near where I live on the east coast of the United States, this time of year is also known as hurricane season. And this is the time of year that we on the East Coast here start thinking about power outages and emergency preparedness kits and making sure we've got candles and batteries. And, you know, it's always a good idea to have some bottled water in a closet somewhere in case you lose power for a day or two. Well, if you've got fish, it's also a good idea to have an emergency preparedness kit and a plan on how to get your fish through a power outage. I went through one a week ago. I had a plan and everything worked fine. I did have a little bit of issues, but we will get into that as the video progresses. Right now, I want to talk about one of the easiest things you can do if you're your average person, I would say, that has 2 to 3 fish tanks or less and does not have a room full of fish tanks like I do. You can probably get away with nothing more complicated than a battery-powered air stone. I do have air stones that are made for fish tanks, but I cannot find them for the life of me. I bought a bunch of them to get me through a power outage we had a few years ago, and I must have stuck them somewhere that I can't find them anywhere. I've looked all over the place. I did, however, find this one, and this is actually made for fishing, and this is made just to keep some minnows or something alive in a bait bucket, and it's not meant to really keep a lot of fish alive. It takes a couple of batteries. I think I paid $7.50. I think the receipt said $7.46 that I paid for this. It's got the air stone and a little bit of hose. It's got an on switch. You just put the hose on there, clip it on the side of your bait bucket, and it will run for hours and hours and hours. So if you've got a 10-gallon tank, or maybe even up to a 20-gallon tank, a pump like that would work just fine, and it would probably keep your fish well and healthy and alive because you'd get plenty of circulation in a smaller tank like that. If you want to start talking about getting into larger tanks, you probably would need either a larger pump or you would need several of those smaller pumps that are designed for maybe a 10-gallon tank or something like that. So a single one of those in a tank this size would probably be enough to keep the water circulated enough that I would not have to worry about oxygen deprivation in the tank. But what you do have to worry about if you go too long without power and your filter shuts down, you actually have to start worrying about the amount of water circulation you get for your nitrogen cycle. So after several hours, if you've only got a small air stone in a tank, you're not going to have enough circulation to really keep the tank functioning properly. This tank here, I accidentally left the filter unplugged after the power outage last week. I did shoot a video where I discussed this, and I talked about why the tank did well even though the filter wasn't running for a day and a half, and that is because of that power head you see down in that left hand bottom corner. That was still plugged in, and that kept plenty of water circulation moving around through the tank. So if you've got air stones that are generating enough water movement that you can keep your water flowing through your gravel and everything else, then that will keep your nitrogen cycle up and running and your tank should stay healthy. Chances are, however, an air stone is not going to be sufficient to do that. So what you're probably going to want to have in addition to an air stone is just keep some ammo lock or some prime or something like that on hand, and keep an eye on your tank. Just start checking after the first hour or two, and check every now and again and see if you're starting to get an ammonia or a nitrite spike, and if you are, then you can use your prime or other additive to block that ammonia until you get your power back on and you can sort of do damage control and do your water changes and get your filter up and running again. If your filter shuts off for more than 5 or 6 hours, I would seriously consider doing a massive filter change before you put it back together, or at least crack it open and give it a sniff. My filter, after a day and a half, was really foul on the inside and needed a thorough cleaning before I could actually put it back on the tank. So those are things to consider, but if you want to do the ultimate safety and have your tanks up and running while your power is out, you can get yourself a small portable generator. So let's go outside and we will take a look at mine, and I will show you what I was doing wrong the other day. If you watched my video, you'll know that I said that the switch that I had installed didn't work properly, today, and I'll get into a little more detail and explain what I was talking about. But I did talk to the electrician, and I found out it was my mistake. I was just making a simple oversight, and everything works fine. I did a dry run this morning, and the house actually worked better than I was hoping it to. So let's go have a look at the generator, and I'll explain what all that was about. Alright, so this is a 3500 watt portable generator. You can buy a kit that has a handle and wheels and you can roll it around or whatever, but it's actually light enough that with a little bit of grunt and effort I can pick it up and carry it. Two people certainly could. So it's still a very small compact generator, but with the 3500 watt capacity, and it will surge up to 4050 watts. So when things start up or kick on and you need a little additional wattage, you can get a little bump above the 3500 watts. But this one was fairly inexpensive. It cost me about $350, and the way it works, and the reason I was having trouble the other day, is you can set it for 110 or, well, 120 or 240. Now, because I have 110 in the house, I thought that I needed to keep this switch here set to the 120 setting, and I did not realize that I needed to set it to this side, which energizes this plug. I had these two plugs energized, and I ran extension cords into the house and ran the fish tanks off of that. But I do have a plug that goes in here, and I had it hooked up. I simply never threw that switch. That's all I needed to do. So this plug is my extension cord. This plugs into the generator itself, and then this end comes over here, and I had this installed, and we plug in right there, and then that actually runs the juice down into my panel in the basement, and we can go have a look at that in a moment. But this is a 3500 watt size, and it cost me $350. At 3500 watts I can run my house basically on crippled running. I can't run it under normal circumstances, but it will be enough that I can keep some lights on, I can keep all my fish up and living, I can use my computer, the TV, that sort of stuff, and then I'll have to sort of alternate the bigger stuff. When the power comes on for the furnace, I'll have to make sure my well pump is turned off, and I'll have to make sure I'm not using the microwave. So it will be a little bit of crippled running, but this size generator here would be enough to actually get my whole house through a little bit of an emergency for as many days as I needed, provided I don't run out of gasoline. So let's go in and we'll have a look at the panel, and I'll show you how that works real quickly. Alright, so this is a typical circuit breaker panel. Most of us are familiar with these. What is different on mine is this little safety switch right here. What this switch is the main. This is where the power comes in from the pole. This breaker here is the switch that goes out to that plug we just looked at next to the generator. So I can't have them both on at the same time. That's what this lock does. So when the power goes out, what I need to do is simply flip this switch over to turn the main off. That way if the power comes back on while the generator is running, they don't come on at the same time. So once this switch is flipped over, I can then raise this up, which moves this out of the way and then allows me to turn this on. That then brings in the power from the generator into the panel, and then I can actually turn rooms on or off as need be, and I can turn my furnace on and off as need be, and so on and so forth, and I can work everything right here from the panel rather than have to run extension cords all over the house. I can actually go room by room and turn everything on and off, and that 3500 watt generator is actually enough to keep my whole house up and running. Again, crippled running, but it would get me through without losing any food, without losing any fish, and without losing my mind from sitting around in a dark house for 2 or 3 days. I'd actually have, internet access, television, etc. So let's go look at the fish one last time, and we can wrap up a few little thoughts on different options for different generators. So I went with the 3500 watt generator because I wanted to be able to run it into my house, and I wanted to be able to keep my heat on and use my refrigerator to keep my food safe and so on and so forth. If I just wanted to do something to keep my fish room up and running, I could go considerably smaller and considerably less elaborate than that, and that's why I did want to talk about that a little bit. When I initially started looking into generators, I looked at the kind that switch on automatically and they power your whole house, so you never miss a beat when the power goes out. those are really expensive, and something that I would need to power even my small house would have been really, really expensive, way out of my price range. So I actually went to Amazon and I started looking at portable generators, thinking in terms of a very small generator that might be enough just to keep this fish room alive. And I was really surprised to find out that you can get a 1,000-watt generator for about $150. Now, a 1,000-watt generator would be more than ample to keep my entire fish room alive. I've got external canister filters. I've got the 304Bs. I have 3 of those, and I have one of the 303Bs. They all have UV sterilizing lights in them. I have high output T5 units on several of these tanks. So on and so forth. I've got hang on the back filters on a lot of them, and all told, with the heaters and everything running, if I had this whole room up and running, it would be around 1,000 watts. I think I could get by with a 1,000-watt generator just to keep this room up and running. For that, you wouldn't need to do anything very elaborate. You could simply get a plug and run it into the room, run a plug strip off of that, and then plug all your tanks into it. Now, of course, in an emergency, you don't need to turn all your lights on, so I could probably save about half my wattage in this room simply by not turning any lights on. And that's why I went with the slightly larger unit. I'd be able to power my house and keep everything up and running, and I actually spent about twice as much money having that transfer switch put in as I did on the generator itself. So if you really wanted to get right down to the nuts and bolts of just keeping a fish room alive, a little portable generator is not really as expensive as you might think. If you've never really looked into them or thought about it before, check it out, have a look, and you might be surprised at what you can get away with. And again, with my fish room down here, I think I have 11 or 12 tanks down here. I'm not even sure anymore. And with lights, heaters, filters, and all, I've only got about 1,000 watts in this room. So if you've got a normal size fish room that has 4 or 5 tanks in it, and you want to just make sure everything is up and running, a simple 1,000-watt generator that you can run one electric cord off of will probably be more than what you would need, and you'd be able to have a few lights on in the house as well. So I hope that was helpful, maybe some food for thought. Maybe you want to check it out and see if you can find something that might suit your needs. At the very least, I would still recommend getting a battery-powered bubble maker or little air pump, one or more for each tank. You know, do the math, figure out how many you're going to need, figure out how many batteries you're going to need, and so on and so forth, and be prepared. And if you are going to run without filters and simply do an air stone, remember what I said about your nitrogen cycle stopping working. So you're probably going to want to get some sort of ammo blocker like Prime or something similar in order to keep your tanks from becoming toxic while the water doesn't circulate. So thanks for watching this one. Please subscribe if you're not already. You never really know what you're going to get with me. I just sort of shoot whatever's on my mind, like this video. If you are subscribed, you won't miss anything that I've got coming up. So thanks for watching again, and I will see you real soon on the next one.